How then, Vinyl Monkey here. You won't believe this. I've just done this week's video and I checked it back and I ran out of time. I thought I was being a bit ambitious, but I'm going to have to do it again, but speak quicker and say less about each record. The reason I ran out of time is this week's video is, welcome by the way, this week's video is inspired by a guy called Harris Pilton, regular on the vinyl community. Great stuff. His stuff is witty, informative, passionate. He tells jokes. It's everything that my site isn't really, and so I would watch him. But he did one on almost perfect albums, acknowledging that nothing is ever totally perfect. And he did 10, and I tried to do 10, but I couldn't get it narrowed down. I had 30 odd or something out there. Anyway, I narrowed it down to 20. Now 20 is a lot to talk about in the 19 or 20 minutes that my camera, for whatever reason, will allow. So I'm going to get right on with it. I've got some notes here for dates and stuff. I've got some glasses to read my own notes if necessary. But I'm going to crack on. No one will be surprised. I'm going to go in chronological order as well. 1968. I'm starting and I'm finishing just a few years ago, and I've got records from most decades, but no one will be surprised that I've included Van Morrison's Astral Weeks. His first solo album, if you don't count Blowing Your Mind. It's the first one he had total control over, and basically you've got Van full bursting at the seams with these lyrics and tunes that have consumed him for years as he's been building up inside of him, just bursting to get out. And you've stuck him in a room with a couple of session jazz musicians, and this is what's come out, and it is stunning. It is just peerless. It's almost perfect. Van Morrison, Astral Weeks. The second one, Curtis's first solo album, Curtis Mayfield that is, of course. There he is. Brilliant yellow. I love the yellow suit. But yeah, this was, I don't know, this was one of the first solo albums. Someone will tell me one that preceded it probably, but it's one of the first ones that I know of that really started introducing sort of social, political sort of issues into soul music, and it opened the door for others to follow. And it's just a stunning album with Curtis's sweet voice soaring over these difficult and important issues, and he does it with such a positivity. You could say naivety in some ways in hindsight looking back, but he's so positive about this that it's absolutely heartwarming. And there's the majestic Move On Up, the extended version on here. Brilliant album, Curtis. The third one, now Harris Pilton had the TRex's The Slider, which I do love as an album as well, but my preference is, my almost perfect TRex album is Electric Warrior, the one that preceded The Slider, also from 1971, right through from Mambo Sun, but particularly Cosmic Dancer, which I love, Monolith, which is gorgeous. It reminds me of playing that on the old radiogram on Sunday afternoons, the only time I could really get access when my mum was out at her sister's and what have you. And then on side two, obviously brilliant, Get It On, and then Life's a Gas on my funeral list as a definite on there. So Electric Warrior, TRex, 1971. Next, when I say Curtis Mayfield opened the door, well, one of the first to come striding right through it with a brilliant album, What's Going On, singing about environmental, social, political, racial issues, the brilliant Marvin Gaye. Stunning album. Everybody, I guess, in the VC has got it or is familiar with it, so I'm not going to ramble on about it. Brilliant stuff. The next one, I have talked about this one before. This is Abandoned Luncheonette by Hall and Oates, Daryl Hall and John Oates. This is from 1973. And you're probably familiar with their later sort of poppy, catchy, inoffensive stuff. Well, this is, I don't know, is it more sort of, it's definitely white soul, but it's more folky orientated. It's got the brilliant single She's Gone, but right front to back, from I'm Just a Kid right through to Every Time I Look at You. Stunning tracks, a brilliant sounding album as well. Gorgeous stuff. Hall & Oates, Abandoned Luncheonette. You won't be surprised this one's in here either, probably. This is Dylan's Blood on the Tracks from 75. Not going to ramble on about this because again, everyone's familiar with this, but this is perhaps Bob Dylan's most flawless, most almost perfect album. Musically, lyrically, production-wise, the whole feel of it all the way through. Oh, just moving stuff. Blood on the Tracks, Say No More, Bob Dylan, 1975. The next one, I could have held this up for 1972, but it was released in 76 but recorded in 72, and it laid sort of fallow due to a whole number of issues. But this is Modern Lovers, or more correctly, Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers. Jonathan Richman, huge fan of the Velvet Underground, and you can hear that all the way through this. But Jonathan Richman's, I don't know, geeky, socially awkward sort of style, and his innocence, and his it's just all over this, and it's absolutely beautiful stuff. This is real proto early punk, real influence on Sex Pistols and lots of others. And yeah, I love Jonathan Richman, seen him a few times, and this is just a great album, almost perfect. I've jumped out of the 70s now and into the 80s, and you might be thinking, why has he missed that punk period, which he's always harking on about? Yeah, because I hardly bought any records, spent all my money on live gigs and drinking, and I suppose because the punk sort of ethic or aesthetic or whatever was, life isn't perfect, why should records be? Fuck it, so I haven't included any punk records. I nearly put Never Mind the Bollocks in there, but no, John wouldn't have wanted me to. So I'm moving into the 80s, and this is 1985. This is the Jesus and Mary Chain. This is Psycho Candy. And this is, it's all Beach Boysy melodies which are there in the sort of background, but they're sort of trying to force the way through from a sort of fuzzy wall of sound of wailing feedback from electric guitars and fuzz and echo and all sorts of other effects, which just sort of almost but not quite drown out those Beach Boysy melodies, which if they were just on their own it wouldn't have been that interesting. But I think this is gorgeous. It's just brilliant stuff. Psycho Candy, Jesus and Mary Chain, 1985. In the following year, the Smiths made their third album, The Queen Is Dead. Yeah, one of my favourite titles of an album. There's the Smiths, and this is just an example of Morrissey's brilliant writing. I mean, his writing can go from brilliant to mad. As his utterances tend towards the latter end, I suppose. But he can write, this guy, there is no doubt about that. Anyone who's listened to the Smith stuff, or his solo stuff, or even read his autobiography, can see that he is a bloody good writer. And Johnny Marr, what a guitarist, and the guitar sounds, the sparklies or janglies, it's just great stuff. Superb rhythm section as well. Great songs all the way through, but maybe Cemetery Gates, I love that one. There's a Light That Never Goes Out is stunning on side 2. Boy with a Thorn in His Side, Big Mouth Strikes Again. Just great stuff. The Queen Is Dead, the Smiths, from 1986. Now into the early 90s, and I've talked about this one quite a lot. This is the Lemonheads. Evan Dando, the singer-songwriter from the Lemonheads, a three-piece punk pop stoner sort of band. I don't know how you'd call them, but they made 3 albums about this time. This one, then the Come On Feel the Lemonheads, then Car Button Cloth. All of them absolutely brilliant. I've chosen this one. It's short, it's snappy, it's everything that's best about the Lemonheads. Just great stuff. It's a Shame About Ray is the title. We're on to some CDs now, and this is 1995. I'll have to hold it a bit closer, being only a CD. This is Ron Sexsmith, the unseasonably baby-faced Canadian. He looks about 10 or 11 years old there, but he's actually, I think he'd probably be 30 odd, early 30s there. singer-songwriter, a bit Jonathan Richmond-esque again, socially awkward, geeky, but beautiful, beautiful stuff. Elvis Costello, I think, got wind of, I think it was this album, and really give it a push. I think he might have asked him to support him on tour, I'm not sure. He's gone on to make lots and lots of stuff, all great, but I love this one particularly. From the opener, There's a Secret Heart. Let me see if I'm going to recommend one song to you. Lebanon, Tennessee. Just love it, absolutely love it. Sums him up. That's Ron Sexsmith, his eponymous debut album from 1995. Then from the same year, this is the Volga Boardman, a band I know next to nothing about. If anybody does, I'd be pleased to hear it. I think they were a couple of mates who went to college together. Anyway, yeah, these songs feel crafted. They're just, every song on here. I've talked about almost perfect albums. This is an album of almost perfect songs from 1 through to 12, and they're all about either driving or women and relationships, which I suppose is the American, maybe it's the rock and roll, the pop sort of thing, sensibility, but they do it so well. This was their third album, not released in the USA, I don't think. I haven't heard any of the other stuff, although I've just had a look on eBay and I've put a bid in for one of their previous albums on vinyl actually, so hopefully that'll come through. But great band, Volga Boardman, and this is Opposite Sex. Whoa, bloody hell, CDs, rubbish. Where do we stick the vinyl? They're falling apart. Look at that. This is Nick Cave's The Boatman's Call, and this is very different from those that preceded it. I mean, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, noisy, aggressive. And this one, I heard it in a record shop and I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's piano-led, it's minimalistic. It's Nick Cave singing sort of starkly and intimately. Brilliant. So I've just mentioned the first 3 tracks. I mean, they're all absolutely stone cold classics. Into My Arms, Lime Tree Harbour, People Ain't No Good. Oh, just bang, bang, bang. And then it just goes on from there. It's just fantastic stuff. Probably my favourite Nick Cave album, The Boatman's Call. Funny we had 2 boatmen in a row, isn't it? That's a coincidence, yeah. Okay, next from 1990, when was this? 1998. This is, got it the wrong way around, this is Neutral Milk Hotel. In an aeroplane over the sea. This one totally passed me by, as it did a lot of people I think when it first came out, and they're sort of a pretty reclusive sort of singer who, if they did get any attention, Jeff Mangum was the singer-songwriter for this band, and he shied away from any sort of publicity as far as I've read about him. And but this is really different. Very opaque, surreal lyrics, sort of rootsy sort of sound, different sort of instruments, and songs that really pull you in and compel you to really want to listen to this. You definitely don't want to take this off the stereo or only listen to half of it or whatever. It's one of those LPs that really does grab you. I didn't become aware of it till this re-release came out about 15 years ago or so, and there was a bit of publicity around that. But it's a fantastic album, Neutral Milk Hotel from 1998. Right, we're into the 2000s. 2001, this is the Silver Jews, Bright Flight. This Silver Jews are a vehicle for David Berman, the brilliant poet and writer David Berman, who sort of founded this group along with Stephen Malkmus from Pavement, really, although Stephen Malkmus doesn't feature on this. He didn't feature on all of their albums. This is maybe my favourite of their albums, and it's a mix of just brilliant surreal poetry by Berman and some instrumentals by a really sort of good laid back band that work really well with a with the lyric songs that go between it. And if you're going to listen to one song off this, I would urge you to, if anyone's not familiar with Silver Dews, give it a go. Horse Leg Swastikas, maybe my favourite off that, but not a bad track on it. Almost perfect. Silver Dews, 2001. The following year, the Flaming Lips produced Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, and this followed on from the brilliant The Soft Bulletin, which was I'd heard of the Flaming Lips, and I quite liked some of their early stuff, but I really got into them on The Soft Bulletin. Was fantastic, but this one I think is almost perfect. It's more electronic, it's more folky. It's typical Flaming Lips in that it's sort of really uplifting and optimistic about dealing with the sort of challenges that modern life throws at you, and dealing with your own mortality as well. And it's right up front about that, in the way that the Flaming Lips excel at that sort of stuff. And this is just great stuff. I'm not even going to mention the tracks; they're all fantastic. Well, do you realise? You'll maybe be familiar with that one. That maybe sums it up. Brilliant stuff. Flaming Lips, 2002. Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. We're skipping quite a bit forward here to 2017, and this is, get it the right way up, Peter Parrot, How the West Was Won. Peter Parrot, I didn't think I'd hear any more from Peter Parrot other than his obituary. I mean, I'd seen him in the early 2000s on one of his comeback. He was brilliant, but he looked like literally at death's door, as he always did when he was with The Only Ones. You read about his terrible addiction problems, but clearly people stuck by him, particularly his family, who featured in this album. His wife in the lyrics, I think, as a reference point, and his sons playing lead guitar brilliantly, by the way, and bass guitar, and the songs are just great. It's like listening to The Only Ones, but I don't know, tighter, more world weary, more wiser perhaps lyrically. The following album maybe got more critically acclaimed for this, but I love this one the best. This is How the West Was Won, Peter Parrot, 2017. Fantastic. Same year, we've got 3 from 2017. This is The National, and this album, I suppose it just sums up sort of midlife ennui, or NUI as I used to call it. Ennui, you're sort of bored and fed up with the unsatisfactoriness of life, and sort of midlife crisis, if you like. And it's sort of really sort of, clever but dour lyrics, and it sounds like it'd be a bit grim, especially spread over a double album like this is, but it is propelled along by this brilliant piano, drum programming, sort of beautiful sort of music in the background, which really grips you, and the lyrics, I've been there, midlife crisis, I suppose. Maybe younger people might not get it, but certainly anyone my age and or just before, I think will really feel this stuff. I think for me it's one of my favourite, The National record, Sleep Well Beast from 2017. This one I've talked about. This is the Rodney Graham Band. Rodney Graham is a Canadian artist, a brilliant artist, sadly died a couple of years ago. This is his album Gondoliers. He's an artist. I went to see his exhibition, which is where I got this album. He tended to sell them alongside exhibitions, so I'm not sure how available these are. But he's well known for his meticulously crafted photographs, which are then printed on huge scale, things like the size of the side of a house, and he often features in those as well. And you can see the sort of thought and work he's put into those photographs. Well, you can feel that in all of these songs. On the one hand, they're simple pop rock songs with references to other artists, like Dave Clark 5 and the Beatles and the Stones. But on the other hand, these are, he's honed these songs to the absolute nth degree to make them almost perfect, and it's an album full of them, making it an almost perfect album. Beautiful stuff. Rodney Graham Band. Lastly, Tom Russell, October in the Railroad Earth. Now, I don't listen to, or tend to listen to, much straight ahead storytelling albums. I like my albums to be vague and woolly and sometimes difficult, and yeah, you know, I'm contrary like that, I suppose. And if anything's too literal or straight ahead, I tend to think, no, that's not for me. I like the more difficult, ethereal stuff. But Tom Russell is such a brilliant storyteller, and he is just authentic, and he's, you know, he's in his 70s now. I did see him at Americana Festival once. Great to see live. This is the only album I've got of his, but I wouldn't want any of the stories on here not to be on here. It's just brilliant stuff. October in the Railroad Earth, Tom Russell from 2019. Now that is my 20 almost perfect albums. I hope I've got to the end of the video alright. I hope you might join me next time. Comments welcome. Cheers, ta-da.